Hey guys. Hey. Hey girl. Hey.
So, welcome to the first episode of Orlando Out of Context. I'm Brian,
I'm Stephanie.
and welcome, guys. We're really excited to get started. We've been thinking about this for a few weeks now. I don't know.
I think longer than a few weeks.
I don't know. Maybe
It's been on your mind for more than a few weeks.
I think it's been on my mind for a while, and I didn't even know what I wanted it to be about. I think, even though like a podcast was on my mind, I didn't know what I wanted it to be about. But it didn't kind of like clicked. I think we
sat
you know
down,
what, we talked about it, huh? We talked about
brainstormed.
like maybe doing one like all about like dating and relationships and all that stuff. But there's podcasts out there already like that, and I think that when you're doing something like that, it's harder to
break
find
into
a
that.
niche. Yeah, break into the niche, and for people to discover you. So we have like kind of a run of show that we're going through, and so we will want to introduce ourselves and kind of like talk about our history with Orlando and how we got here and all that. So do you want me to start? So
Sure.
I'll start. So I came here in 2005 on the Disney College program, like a lot of people around here do, especially where we live. We live in South Orlando, so we're like at the very outskirts of Orlando.
What would be, I think, considered what people call the attractions area?
Right. So we live in the attractions area, and so I actually live like we both live like right where we first arrived, like right where around where we first arrived when we came to Orlando. So I did the college program in fall of 2005, and then I basically
That's where we met.
yeah, we met on the college program.
Working on Main Street at the Magic Kingdom.
I worked for Disney for about 7 years total, and in different capacities, in the parks and the resorts, and then also office gigs. And then I spent 3 years in Oklahoma between 2005 and now. I spent 3 years in Oklahoma going to university, finishing my degree. And then I came back to Disney, which is part of that 7 years. And then I lived in Brazil for a year, which will probably come up frequently, because I'm sure that we
still have a lot of ties to that world.
Yeah, we have ties to Brazil, and we have ties to I'm talking about Brazil coming up because we'll probably have Brazilian listeners.
Yeah,
In fact,
yeah.
probably some of our first listeners will be Brazilian. But anyway, because Brazil is so popular, and I have quite a few, and we both have friends in Brazil. So anyway, that's kind of like my geographic history of like where I've been. And most of my adult life has been in Orlando. It's like a place that I always come back to.
Yeah.
So
like a piece of our heart is how
Yeah.
we a lot of times explain it.
So Steph can kind of share how she came, because she was here a little bit before I was.
Well, growing up, we would always come to Florida. Like every time we come on vacation, it would always be to Orlando. We never went anywhere else. So I always loved it. Always had a big connection. And I came on, I did a first college program in 2004. Went back home, did a little bit more schooling. And then I still felt drawn here. Like I wanted to come back, and I wasn't finished. And so I came on a second college program in 2005, 2006, which is when I met Brian. And, it was just history from there. I just stayed here, kind of grown my life here. And it's amazing. I've really got a family here, like a second family. Like, sometimes they say you have your blood family and then they have the family that you choose.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely met the family that I chose here. And, a lot of people think this is just a place to come and have fun and funsies and go home. But, for us, it's like a lifestyle. It's like our life here.
Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like the name. And I'll get back to kind of the personal, because you said where you're from, right?
Oh, originally,
we didn't say. So you
we
go
didn't.
first, and then I'll go.
Well, originally I'm from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, which is about 40 minutes north of Pittsburgh. So it's a very small town.
Right. And you did not move as a kid. You grew
No,
up in
I
one
lived there my
place.
whole life.
And so I grew up in one place as well. I'm from the West Coast, Sacramento, California. So I'm from what we call NorCal. So back to kind of like the name Orlando out of context. So we see Orlando kind of differently than the rest of the nation, really the world, because we're an international destination for many people across
And
the
we're here
globe.
24/7. Like, we live our life here. It's not
Mhm.
like, this is where we come for vacation anymore, which is awesome because even though this used to be our favorite vacation spot, it's transformed into something else for us. Even working at Disney, you would think working at Disney would then ruin the magic of loving Disney, but it just lets you see everything in a whole new light and like a whole new direction.
Right. And I think that like some of us who work for Disney spend our whole time at Disney. For Stephanie and I, that's not
Yeah.
the case. I think especially now as we're
Getting
like
older.
in our 30s, we're like branched out a little bit and we see
Looking
different
for
things.
deeper things,
Yeah, and
artsy things, music, arts, food.
exploring. We travel more. We explore Orlando more. I think even like for me, within the last 2 years, I've explored more of Orlando, and I think it's like
I think also we're like financially in a better place than we were when we first moved
Right.
here, so it allows us to.
right. So
Do
when we were
a little bit more.
younger, we did a lot of Disney because it was free for us.
Yeah.
So that's like, and we lived right next to it. We worked there. I mean, it was free. It was something to do that was free. And Disney is a big part of Orlando, and that's why Orlando is what it is, because of Disney, Universal, and the attractions. But there's a lot more, and I think that now more than ever, probably a lot of it has to do with the economy is in a better place. There's
Yeah.
there's more restaurants popping up. There's
Even
more
since
things to
we
do.
moved here, I feel like
Yeah.
there's 80% more hotels,
Mhm.
apartment complexes, restaurants.
I mean, just in the
businesses.
last I don't know, 3 years. Like when I came back from Brazil is when I saw it. When I came back from Brazil at the beginning of 2016, after being there for just a year, like there was tons of new like apartment complexes and stuff, and in the last 2 years, there's been like a boom, and where you would have empty pockets of just green,
Field.
forest or vegetation. Now there's things being built up. So anyway, that's kind of where we come from. That's kind of the history of or the backstory of the kind of name. It's out of context. It's out of what
The norm.
people generally associate with Orlando. So anyway, so how we met. So we already kind of explained how we met.
We weren't friends at very first.
No, we weren't friends at first.
It took a while
It took a
for
while.
Brian to warm up
Because
to me.
I think our relationship developed. It wasn't warm up. It was just like I don't know.
Meh.
It wasn't warm up. I don't think that. But yeah, our relationship developed after the college program because we became closer like the last 6 weeks of the college program.
Which is strange because we spent a long time
then-
working in the same area.
Yeah, you were on trains. You were a conductor more. Right?
No, I wasn't on
at that
train. I was
time.
doing pack
You
and
did pack, and I hardly did pack.
and turnstile. So maybe that's why we didn't get to see each other a lot because we weren't working the same shifts.
For those who don't know what PAC is, it's parade and audience control. And when we were on our college program together, we met working on Main Street, USA, in the Magic Kingdom. So part of the
And that department consisted of people that worked turnstiles,
Right.
people that worked on the train, and people that worked parade audience control.
Right.
So you could essentially work in that department and not really
see
each
someone
other
else,
if you're working opposite shifts or opposite job positions.
Right. So we got close after I had left. You were here because you had a place here and you were living here. And I think we just kept communicating and kept talking. And then 6 months after I had left my college program and I was back in California for 6 months, and then you had a room open in your place, and so I came and moved.
And we went on this fabulous
yes.
California vacation.
We drove from my hometown, and some other friends met us.
Sacramento.
Right. Some other friends met us in Sacramento. We did like San Francisco,
all the way down the coastline.
and
Best trip ever.
all the way down the coastline of California.
Ended
the
it
Hearst
in
Castle.
Disneyland.
Yes, we ended in Disneyland, and then our friends flew, and then Steph and I drove across country.
And your
very
little
quickly
Ford
in Escort. It was a
Escort.
Ford Escort.
All the way across the country.
Oh,
with all your
memories.
belongings.
Like praying that the car would not break down. And it did well. We did break down, but it wasn't the car's fault.
Yeah.
It was an object in the road that we broke down, but we don't need to rediscover those memories. So anyway, that's how we met. I think Stephanie is the one person, like I say, my oldest friend, but she's not my oldest friend because I still have, I have friends in California, but she's the friend that I've consistently remained in contact with like at least once a week, like even in Brazil, at least once a week, talking. And so even when we're apart, we're communicating. So she would be like, I don't know, I would say my oldest friend, but that may offend some people, but yeah, my oldest friend. So that's us. That's how we met. And we've covered
and even through different seasons of our friendship, we've drawn apart a little bit and then come back together. And I feel like right now is a time where we're very, very close due to certain circumstances in our personal life have brought us closer together. And that's what kind of led us here to want to talk about like a lifestyle podcast.
So
and talk about things that we like doing. And
let's talk about the goals of the podcast. And like why we started it. I know I have a passion for Orlando just because it's the place that I come back to. I like the feeling here that there's always like something new. There's always new energy here because of how transient it is, both because we are in the attractions area, so it's very transient. We live close to like convention, and there's always people coming and going. There's also like it feels pretty international as well. Like there's always someone of different culture here that you meet.
And I feel that people revolve around us. So, if we lived elsewhere, we might not see our friends and family as much, but because they want to come here for vacation, we get to see our friends and family a lot because they want to come, every year, every twice or 3 times a year. So it brings everyone to us.
Right. And it's kind of like it's a fun
Which
place
is why I like, I'm interested in Orlando lifestyle because, I have friends that come frequently and I'm always looking for new things to show them because, the parks are getting old for my friends that come, 2 or 3 times a year to visit me. I have a few friends that come frequently and I want to show them like new exciting things, things about Orlando lifestyle.
And I think like we had said, we're like newly discovering, we're like kind of, I feel like
we're trying to reach out.
We're doing better. And I think that in terms of like expanding our bubble.
And I think that also came along with looking for, reaching for that feeling of community that lacked really. When you first moved here, you don't really feel that very much. There's a lot of things you miss about living in a hometown, like living in a small town, because Orlando does not have a hometown feel, I don't think. So that's why we're reaching out to try to like get that feeling and discover these community events and just different things.
Yeah. And there's good offerings here. I mean, we have small restaurants and we have restaurants from celebrity chefs. So, and the scene is getting pumped up really because we get compared a lot to Vegas, and I think we're number 2 to Vegas in terms of convention guests. Like we have, we're second.
So many convention hotels. We have the Orlando Convention Center.
So it's huge, the Orange County Convention Center. So we have a big draw both on families, but also business adults people. And business. So, and it's a good spot to be. So, one of the things that we'll be doing is definitely, taking a look at different restaurants that we go to, different events that we go to,
featuring also, business owners and people that we know in the community, like other professionals.
We have plans to have guests. We already have our first guest lined up, so we'll be meeting up with them later in the next few days, and they will be episode number 3, I believe. So we definitely have plans to showcase the community, so it won't just be us talking. We might get a little boring,
Little nuggets of
but we'll have
information.
nuggets. Yeah, we'll have nuggets of our tidbits, like our tips for things that we're kind of like, I'm gonna call it pro tips, like our pro tips for what to do. We'll talk about the attractions too, but our plan is not to focus heavily on the
Just
attractions.
sprinkle it in
Yeah,
as needed.
you might hear about the attractions every episode, but it's not going to be
The main
all about
focus.
attractions unless it's something exciting like Star Wars Land, which
Or
is
the opening of Toy Story.
or the opening of Toy Story and all that. So we will talk about things about the attractions, but it's not going to be the main focus. We don't want to just focus on attractions. We are focusing on Orlando and Central Florida as a whole. So
Because it's so like you can drive. Basically, you can take a lot of day trips as well if you want to like branch out a little bit more. You know, you can be at the beach, you can be in other areas, Central Florida. You know, there's a lot to offer around here.
we're like an 45 minutes to an hour really to like Cocoa Beach, so the East Coast, the Atlantic coast. And then we're about like an hour and a half to like Clearwater, Tampa,
St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg. And St. Petersburg has the Dali Museum, which we've been to, which is
Yeah.
awesome. I don't know why that popped in my head, but it did. So,
There's a lot of museums.
which I think that it's awesome that the Dali Museum is there. It's kind of a nice thing to have. So that's what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about, Orlando, Central Florida, and even when we like do trips, like I know we'll probably talk about Miami sometimes too. I've recently been on a trip to Miami and I had a great time. And the ice cream museum is now, and
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Girl, I was just reading about that cuz Target is doing a collab with the ice cream museum
Really?
for kids clothes.
Okay.
So I was just reading about that yesterday on Instagram. But I definitely want to take a pic in that sprinkle pool.
Yeah, so when I was in Miami, I guess it was
And
like,
I've been to Miami before too, but it was kind of like a short visit because it was we had gone for a wedding, so we didn't have that really much time to like check it out. So I would definitely take a
Yeah.
second look at Miami.
the last time I was there, which was like, I don't know, 6 weeks ago now, maybe 8 weeks ago now, 2 months. It was one of my best trips, I think, because I got to see a little bit more, like different areas of Miami. So even though it's not Central Florida, I'm sure we'll talk about it. We'll talk about other cities as well, but mainly, obviously,
We'll talk about whatever the hell we
we'll
want.
talk about whatever we want.
And if you don't like it, too bad
It's just an excuse for us to
to
talk.
talk. Basically, we want to just capture. We always have lots of good talks.
Right.
And that's kind of also what led us to this because we could just be talking and talking and talking and be like, we need to start a podcast because this is so entertaining. Like if someone was watching us from the outside, I'm sure they would be interested.
Yes, definitely.
So, it's all worth taking in.
Let's talk about like what's our favorite thing about Orlando, and then on the opposite, like what's our least favorite thing about Orlando. Let's start with like our least favorite thing about Orlando. And this is like a pop-up question that I'm asking us, and I haven't even thought about it, and Stephanie definitely has not thought about it.
What is my least favorite thing about Orlando? I know this is like so cliche, and everyone always asks me when I say this why I came here in the first place, but I hate that we get like no seasons here and it's just hot or really hot all the time. Like I miss wearing cute like sweaters and scarves and winter boots and just really cute like, and I just miss like fall foliage because the fall is my favorite season. So everyone's like, "Oh, why did you move somewhere like Florida then?" But, obviously it was less about the weather, more about what is here, who is here,
Right.
and my heart is here. But definitely probably the weather would be my least favorite thing about Orlando. And my favorite thing would definitely be that I just have anything that I want. Like we went to Vegas for my birthday in January, and I was just a little underwhelmed, unfortunately, because basically everything in Vegas I can have here. Like everything. Like every restaurant, every shopping experience, every store, high end, low end, a big Ferris wheel, big swing, a slingshot, a wax museum, anything that was in Vegas, short of like JLo and Britney, I can have here in Florida, in
Which
Orlando.
J-Lo and Britney are leaving
So
Vegas. So I guess for you, I'm the opposite. I love Vegas. So
I mean, the vibe at Vegas was nice, but I just felt like there wasn't anything there that I couldn't have here.
right.
We just have everything. Like the shopping is amazing. Probably that would be it. Shopping.
Yeah, we do have good shopping.
I can have whatever I want here at awesome prices. So what about you? What are your likes and dislikes?
So
One of each. Big one. Main point.
I will say that I'm over the I-4
Ugh.
drama. So
Yes.
I-4 is like the main interstate. It quote unquote goes east to west, but it's really like more like north to south kind of.
Yeah.
Like it could be a little bit confusing.
I was just talking about this to my coworkers yesterday. We're like, when is this ever going to be done?
But it like as long as I've been here, I think as long as we've been here, there's always been some part of
They're like
there's always
widening
been
the road, so the traffic patterns are always changing, which is very dangerous on this particular
Right.
road. And with the drivers,
it's not just a road, it's a highway.
because
It's a highway.
people, a lot of tourists here, they're not very familiar with the roads, and then on top of it, when you're just keep changing the traffic patterns, it's kind of difficult to keep up with it, and
Right.
it's just kind of a mess.
Yeah, it's definitely a mess. And especially right now, it's bad by Universal, I would say, and it's bad by downtown, and even past downtown.
Yeah,
Like the Fairbanks exit to Winter Park is totally changed now,
yeah.
which is it's all right. Like that change that they made works. I don't know if it's gonna stay that way, but the change because you basically it's two exits in one, and you have to stay to
Yeah.
the left to. If you're going eastbound, you have to stay to the left to continue to Fairbanks. So it's a little confusing if you're used to one way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be, I mean, that's kind of like, I mean, that's kind of a weak answer, but it's a pain.
At this moment in time, that is a major issue here in Orlando. So what's your favorite thing?
So my favorite thing, I think one of my favorite things, and this is the answer that I'm going to choose from, or I'm going to choose for my response, is probably that we are an international city to some extent, in the fact that like we have a good international airport.
Oh,
So we can get relatively inexpensive flights to anywhere. So we can go across the country, like to Los Angeles, relatively inexpensive.
And pretty much one ways. I mean, I don't have to deal with a lot of layovers, if any.
Right. So like direct
Yeah.
flights. And that, yeah, we can get a lot of places directly without having to stop over somewhere. So that's one of my favorite things. And I haven't really taken advantage of like a lot of European travel, but I mean, it's all there.
I don't think I realized how like awesome our airport is until I go other places, like to visit friends and stuff. And I realized how far they live from the airport, or like how much traffic it takes to get to the airport. So, sometimes you have to equate a couple hours
Right.
just to get there on top of the 2 hours that you're coming early for your flight. We can basically leave the area that we live about a mile apart from each other, and probably I usually leave at the 2 hour mark to my flight.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how easy it is to get to the airport.
My only thing is the making sure you have to leave time for the Uber to actually get to you. I think that's been my challenge. The last few times I flew out is Uber, and like dealing with
Because the whole scheduling a ride thing
it
doesn't
doesn't
really work.
really that's the
They don't
yeah.
schedule anyone.
The
so I don't
scheduling
know
a
what
ride,
the deal with that is.
it's false advertising because it's not really a scheduling. It's just we're gonna automatically do it for you. It's like auto call. It's not
Yeah.
scheduling. It's an auto call. So I don't think if it would be scheduling if they like assign. I don't know. They
Assigned
couldn't.
it to a driver so
Right.
that they knew to get up and be at your house at
Right.
XOXO
And
time.
I don't. I mean, I don't know if they would ever do that, but to me, that's what scheduling is.
Yeah.
And that's what I would like on Uber. A feature that I would like on Uber is to be able to like friend a driver, so they're like
Oh,
a preferred
yeah.
driver, right?
Yeah. Because sometimes you meet people and they're awesome. You really like their personality and they're reliable. They maybe live like in your complex or your neighbor or something, so it's quick for them to get to you.
But again, Uber's so transient. Like one day, someone could
Yeah.
be an Uber driver, and then the next day they're like not. So I guess that doesn't really matter, and that's probably why something like that hasn't been set up.
But there's always room for growth.
Yeah.
You never know.
But what do you think about like while we're on the topic of Uber? What do you think in general of the Uber drivers in Orlando? What's your opinion?
My opinion is that I have not had a great experience, mostly because I run into people who, like, when I call the driver, it'll say to me, "Your driver is deaf or hard of hearing," and then I get the driver, and in all actuality, they just don't speak English,
Right.
and or you get a driver that's driving under someone else's profile.
I've had
So
that before.
you get in the car and it's a boy, but you look at the picture on your phone and it's a girl.
I've had that happen.
And when you sign up to be a driver, you have to go through background checks. You have to go through checks to make sure your license is current and, valid, and that you're a safe driver and you're a safe person. So I don't think it's fair to be, obviously Uber is a great way to make some money if you're in between jobs, or just a great way to get extra cash in general. But I don't, I think it needs to be a little more. I think you need to actually, like, the person that's going to be a driver needs to go to some office and present themselves to somebody. And, it can't just be like any old person
Right.
is just grabbing a phone and hooking up someone's license and going out and driving.
And that's pretty much how it is, because when I moved back from Brazil, I didn't have a job. I was in the process of looking for a job, so I signed up to become a driver, and it's very easy. Like you submit everything through the app, and there's no in person, there's no even over the phone like talking to someone. Like you just take pictures of your documents, and that's it.
I think there needs to be a few more barriers of entry for that.
When I
position.
first started using Uber, the first time I used Uber was in Brazil, and that experience is way better because they interview, supposedly is what I've heard, is they interview everyone
Yeah.
in Brazil. So if you want to be a driver, you have to go through an interview process, your car has to be inspected, etc. And pretty much I would say 80% of the cars that I drove in Brazil were very nice, and like even though it was like the base, what is it, Uber X,
Yeah.
it was like still like leather seats, and I think there was one time I was in a Mercedes, another time I was in a BMW, so it was like a nicer experience. The drivers in Brazil wear suits,
All of them?
pretty much all of them. The Uber drivers, even just the people driving Uber X, they were in suits. The taxi drivers in Brazil, I mean, they just wear, loose, whatever, button-up shirts. But the Uber drivers, they wear full-on, like, a suit.
I mean, I have more experience in using Uber in other cities, which I really have had a great experience with, because people are super nice and they give you, recommendations as far as like places to eat, places to check out, places to stay away from, and they're just really awesome. But here in Orlando, I have not had a great experience, and honestly, I can say that that's like really candid, because I've only had to use Uber here a handful of times. Maybe like when my car doesn't start, I had one issue with my battery on my car, or just going out with friends and we may be drinking or something. We just want to all be together and not have to drive. But I would say if I've used Uber 10 times here, 8 times I've had one of those situations listed.
I had one time here, I think it was maybe it was just down International Drive, and I knew I was going to be drinking, and so I just decided to take one. I forget what it was, but I think it was nighttime, and he had to stop for gas. He literally pulled into a gas station and stopped for gas, which,
while your meter was running?
While the meter was running, but really when the time doesn't really matter. So when you're for an Uber driver, he doesn't get paid that much for time. He gets paid more for
still.
the mileage. But still, I mean, it's wasting someone's time. And if
Yeah.
you're whatever, it doesn't matter where you're going. I could have been, whatever. I could have been going anywhere. But the thing is that he didn't. He shouldn't have been taking a ride if his gas tank wasn't full and he was on E. So my experiences in Orlando with Uber, meh. But we were in Las Vegas in January, and I felt like the majority of our Uber drivers were really good.
Yeah. They
right?
were.
And there was more female Uber drivers
For
there.
sure.
Like, I think maybe half or more than half of
And I went to Atlanta
more female.
last weekend, and every Uber driver we had was a girl. And they were all awesome, hospitable, so funny, like telling us crazy stories. Everyone in Atlanta was just so, like, crazy, just, like, so cute and, just so Southern.
Southern hospitality.
But I didn't have any of those problems that I have here. Everyone was who they were, who they said they were. Everyone was completely capable of speaking English.
In New York, I've had good experiences and pretty good experiences in New York, too. Nothing bad. But that's not to say, like, I would never stop using Uber.
I love Uber.
I mean, I love Uber.
Gosh, if we would have had that when we were 21, life would have been so good.
On the college program?
Yes.
Because I didn't have
think of all the times you wouldn't have had to
I didn't have my car with me on the college program.
Yeah. The person to pick me up.
Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about our favorite
podcasts are something I've newly gotten into since I've been working out a lot and having a lot of time to myself. And even when I'm in the car, I just love to always be consuming some kind of information or learning something. So I've just newly been to podcasts, but I think Brian's been listening to podcasts for a little bit longer.
So when I lived in Brazil and I was on public transportation or whatever, I would listen to podcasts. The main one I listened to was What's the Tea with RuPaul and Michelle Visage. And so I listened to them back then in 2015. And I've been listening. There was a while where I wasn't listening, so I caught up recently with their podcast. So I'm listening to them, and then I've listened to a few others throughout the years. I can't like pull up the names, but it's been a few years I've been listening. I think at that time I was listening to them on SoundCloud. But now you can find them like on Spotify.
Man, that's vintage. That's like old school.
Now you can find, most things you can find both on Spotify and Apple, the Apple podcast app. And then in research kind of seeing what other cities do when we kind of decided that we were going to focus on Orlando, I've been listening to, I think, Stephanie, you listened to a few of their episodes, is Don't Come Here, We're Full, which is basically, which is sometimes what we want to say,
like
I guess.
Like a bunch of millennials.
But yeah, they're for...
Which we say actually a lot. We say a lot when we're driving around, like, gosh, I wish people would just stay away.
Yeah, stay away. Or this traffic. And mostly it's when we're
during the holiday season, when it's like so busy here.
But I listen to them, and they're a relatively new podcast.
Some podcasts that I really love. My absolute favorite podcast it's an NPR podcast called How I Built This, and each episode they feature like the CEO of a business, and basically it can be like an hour and a half, and they go through like the whole from like day one of when the thoughts sparked about their business, like how they started it, like in their apartment, in their garage, like all the way up till current day of their company. And it's just so awesome to hear that those people, because a lot of them are older, like not older people, but people who started their business without Google, without the internet, without social media, and just listening to like different business tactics and like the ways people like functioned and got the word out and got their business to grow without social media. Like, it's so easy these days. I mean, but yet it's so hard, because in a world where you have everything at your fingers, it's kind of flooded. The markets are flooded with everybody trying to do the same thing and trying to figure out ways to stand out. But I feel that I'm an entrepreneur. I've really been interested in business lately, starting my own business, looking to start more businesses in the future. So that podcast has been really great for me. Like, I love that one. And then one that Brian pointed out to me is called Guys I Fucked, or Guys I Like to Fuck. What is it called? Guys I Fucked, I think it's called. And it's like two girls from, I think they live in New York or California.
I don't know. I think you listen.
I haven't listened
more.
to it. I
I've only listened
binged
to
for
one or
like a
two.
week, and then I just stopped listening because they're super long, and I just kind of got involved listening to other things. But it's like funny date stuff, like date anecdotes, and like dating in the current world that we live in, and just they bring a lot of like professionals on, like doctors, who talk about a lot of things, like a lot of different things. So that one's kind of fun. It's lighthearted. It's nothing real serious. It's just fun. But those are the only two that I've been listening to. I've been looking for new ones.
There's a podcast for everything.
Yeah.
And going back to what Stephanie said about she listens because she's always wants to be consuming content. I think that.
And I also found, which is a complete game changer, that you can fasten the pace in which the information comes to you.
Yeah,
but I think this is only on Apple.
I don't think they have that on Spotify.
You can play the audio at a speed like 1.5, 2, so you can speed it up, sort of like.
So you can like speed.
So you can
listen.
hear, speed listen, and it's great. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but I love it because sometimes I really do like people just talk a lot, and I just want to hear it.
Right.
And I can listen quicker. If I'm capable of taking it in quicker, I want to.
Sure.
That way I can get more consumed.
Yeah, I think that, like, for me is get tired sometimes of listening to the same music.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that was another thing. It was basically I was getting sick and tired of the radio.
Right.
Like, they just play the same mindless, crappy music at that. Like, I love music, but.
And you can, of course, like Spotify, you have all the music you want in the world, but I don't know, sometimes it's nice to learn something new or just hear people talk. Like right now, you're listening to us.
And hear other people's opinions about things. So you're not alone in the world. Like when you hear people talking about like their experiences with Tinder, dating sites, you're like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one who went through this bullshit. Or just anything in the professional world, you hear about people's struggles and stuff, and you're like, gosh, I'm glad somebody else, like another human being, feels the way I feel inside, and I'm not alone.
Yeah, and I think
it's a great way to connect.
And podcasts now I think they're getting a little bit more popular.
Yeah. Than
they were. I mean, I think they've been around, but I think they're getting a little bit more popular, especially now. You can get them wherever, like I said. So we're going to wrap things up. But there's a few things that we want to invite you to do. So if there's something that you want to hear, something you're curious about, or our opinion on, like in terms of Orlando, that's another thing we'll probably do a lot. Well, obviously, is we'll share our opinion of certain things. So if there's like a certain thing a topic that you want us to talk about, you can always email us at orlandooutofcontext@gmail.com. And then please follow us on Instagram at orlandooutofcontext as well.
If you have events that you want to bring light to in any way, you could always...
Yeah, send us an email. Like, let us know if there's an event that you want us to maybe attend. If we can attend it, we'll try.
Tag us on Instagram.
Yeah,
tag us on Instagram. If you're at an event that you think's cool,
sure,
we can talk about it. We can do research, talk about it.
For sure. And then our website as well. So you're going to find our website has all the important links. Like, if you want to like us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, find out where we're being broadcast, search for us on wherever you consume your podcasts, and hopefully that we will be there. So if you're listening on the website, hopefully you can find us on one of those outlets as well. So until next time, we will see you.
Bye.
Bye.